我爱台湾
人客来坐
So last week, Claire started telling us how she ended up in the Swiss Alps and she met a friend that she used to know in China. Let's get right back to our chat with Claire.
And then when I'm in Switzerland, somebody I knew from Beijing messaged me and she was like, I live in Taiwan now. I'm doing my master's here and it's really nice. You should consider it. They have some scholarships. And then she sent me some pictures of like Xiaoliuqiu and some beaches and it was really nice. And I was like, that's a really nice place. I'm doing some research and I was like, wait, you can also surf there? The beaches are nice. I was like, okay, sold.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, they have language programs. That's actually very interesting because my main reason like doing a master's in China was I really wanted to learn Mandarin, but then my program was in English and the language really was not a focus. I was not spending any time in China as this was all going on online. I was like, that would actually be perfect because, you know, I want to go and learn more Mandarin. And so I applied for the Huayu scholarship, the language program.
That's a nice program.
Yeah, so I applied in March and then I was waiting for the results till the summer. The scholarship was confirmed in June, but then it was still extremely unlikely that Taiwan would open up because borders were closed completely. And so they were like, we don't know, like here's your scholarship, but probably it's not gonna happen. And like, at that point I was already giving up. I was like, yeah, it's not gonna happen for another year. Like Taiwan's not gonna open up for the whole year. Literally one day I was just like, okay, that's it. I made my plan. Like I'm gonna go to Greece this winter and then move to Latin America because I've never been and da-da-da. And I was like so excited. I go to bed and I wake up in the morning. I'm like, woohoo, like life is great. I have some plans and do my yoga and like eventually like turn on my computer and then I see this email like urgent, Taiwan decided to open its borders and if you want to come for the September term, let us know now. Like 'cause things need to get rolling because like, there's no time to lose. And I was like, what now? Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've been in Taiwan since when?
So I eventually delayed until December. And so I got here in November.
Congratulations. You finally made it to Taiwan. I mean, what did it feel like when you finally made it to Taiwan? Was Taiwan what you expected?
First of all, it felt like a victory because it's just been such a process to come here.
Totally.
You know, desperately wanting to go back to China or to Asia for like nearly 2 years. And then I missed the cultural shock, like just the everyday experiences when you just look around and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, it's very interesting. Something's different. Like, I want to figure it out. Something's weird. What's the cultural background here? Like, what am I not understanding? You know, it just, I find it fascinating living in a culture which is so different when you just like sort of on your toes every day and it, you know, keeps you alert and it keeps you wondering and like questioning your own culture and your own values. Because, you know, at the beginning, it's like I come and I'm like, oh, like Chinese people drink hot water. Like, that's really weird. Like, why would I ever drink that? It tastes weird. And then it gets cold outside and you're like, wait a second. It actually makes a lot of sense because when I drink cold water, like my body freezes from the inside. So like, and so you just like start realizing like, oh, maybe the views that I hold are just conditioned by my culture. And maybe like the other thing actually makes much more sense, right? Yeah. So when I got to my quarantine hotel, I was just like, I made it. Like, is this even real? And I was so excited. I was like, and now I just get to rest in this hotel, you know, in this hotel room and not worry about anything. Regarding how my expectations, I guess, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really expect much. I was just like, I know it's going to be great. Like, I just feel this is the right thing for me to do. Yeah. But when I got here, I realized that I did have expectations. So I guess I kind of expected it to be like China because it's my only frame of reference.
Totally.
You know, I sort of couldn't help but compare. And so in that regard, it was very different because I was kind of imagining like maybe something like between Japan and China. Like, that's my best guess. Right. But that's, you know, that would be a huge generalization, right? And yeah, no, I really like Taiwan. You know, I love the nature. People are amazingly welcoming and friendly. I find it a very open-minded culture. I think because there have been so many different influences.
Right. I think we might have a few listeners out out there that might be itching to get themselves to Taiwan to learn Mandarin, just like you. Can you tell us a little bit about the language program you're in right now in Taiwan?
For sure. So it's called the Huayu Enrichment Scholarship. So Huayu means the Chinese Mandarin language. You have to apply in your home country. The scholarships are offered to pretty much most countries' nationals. So apply in your local representative office of Taiwan. You need to apply in around February or March in the year before the academic year that you want to go in. And you can apply for 1, 2, 3, or 4 terms, and each term is 3 months. So basically the academic year starts in September. So I applied for 12 months. I was like, of course, I'm going to ask the maximum, right?
Right.
And eventually they gave me 9 months. You can apply to a school of your choice directly.
Okay.
And there are Mandarin schools which participate in this program all over Taiwan. So like in all different cities and towns throughout Taiwan. But there's people from all over the world, and some people like very different ages. There's people who are like in their 60s coming here to learn on a scholarship. So yeah, it's a great scholarship.
So a scholarship meaning that you don't have to pay any tuitions at all?
So they only give you a sum of cash every month that you use then to pay for your tuition and pay for all of your expenses. So they don't pay for anything. They just give you a sum of money every month.
And you go to classes Monday through Friday, that type of deal?
I guess there might also be differences for the different language centers. So the one where I am in Taipei, you can either do regular class, which is 2 hours every day, or you can do intensive class, which is 3 hours.
Got it. Which one are you in?
So the first term I was doing regular, then I switched to intensive last term. This term I was kind of hesitant, but then I just kind of felt really tired, and so I switched back to regular because I feel like my brain is really getting saturated. And also like I'm somebody who likes novelty. The school is great, the teachers are amazing, textbooks are great, but it just gets very monotonous and repetitive. So every day go to class at the same time, same classmates, small class, and like same structure of the textbook.
Well, also I would imagine for someone like you who's just more free-spirited, it might be more beneficial for you to immerse yourself in your environment in Taipei, to really talk to the people on the street, talk to the people on the market. Like I feel like you would enjoy that and really learn a lot more from that than, getting 1 extra hour in the classroom, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And at the beginning I didn't do that because my Chinese wasn't that good, and I think I just felt really intimidated, and I feel like my self-perception didn't quite catch up with my Chinese abilities. It's like I was like, oh, I don't speak Mandarin, and then I like talked to my professor about politics in class for an hour, right? And and then I go out and I'm like, can somebody please help me deal with this bureaucratic mafan because I don't understand Chinese. So that's quite funny. But yeah, I started doing that mainly when I travel. So I usually just travel by myself. Then I'm like the only foreigner around, and then I have amazing exchanges with locals, and it's super rewarding. That's something that just made a huge difference for me, like learning the language. When you know the language, traveling just becomes a whole different experience.
Totally. So how's your Chinese now that you've been in the program for, I think, 8 months, right?
Yeah, 7, I think.
Oh, wow.
It's much, much better for sure. I feel like it's very tricky because if I'm speaking to my teacher or a teacher, I can communicate about anything, I feel. Like, obviously, it's not always super graceful, but I can express myself and I understand everything. But I feel like if I go out and try to talk to somebody who is not a teacher and perhaps doesn't speak a foreign language and doesn't have the understanding of what it's like to be a foreign language speaker or learner, it's a bit challenging maybe because they don't know how to adapt their language to speak in a way that a foreigner understands. And sometimes I would be like, oh, I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me, or can you rephrase that? And then they're like, oh, like this word, how do you say it? Like, oh, 英文怎么讲? And I'm like, I don't need you to say it in English. I just want you to explain what the word means or like rephrase it.
Exactly.
And I get that, right? Like,
yeah.
Especially if somebody doesn't have an experience with what it's like to, you know,
different languages. Yeah, totally.
So I still feel intimidated sometimes, you know, or like people who like have a strong accent.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, like I'm still used to the standard Beijing Mandarin. So sometimes, you know, like, and my teachers always pronounce in the standard way, like all the sh's and the j's, and then people say s and z, and I'm like, what are you saying? Like, I don't know that word. And it's just they're pronouncing it differently and I'm not used to it.
Yeah, Taiwanese Mandarin has a little bit of different accent and also different tonality, I think. Mandarin is such a completely different language structure than all the European languages that you know. Was it really hard for you to learn Chinese? And what did you find was the most challenging thing about learning this language?
Yes, it's really, really hard, I find.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a little bit lazy because I'm used to learning European languages, and which came really easy for me. Like, I didn't really have to learn. I just sort of, through exposure, like I just absorbed them somehow. But you cannot do that with a language like Chinese, especially if you're coming from a European linguistic background. So that's been kind of frustrating. Like, I had the same first when I was learning Arabic many years ago, just because, again, like I had to study really hard, and then I just sort of gave up because I was just like, I don't have the time for this. Like, it's too hard. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But with Mandarin, so now it's the first time I'm really learning a language meticulously in a structured manner, going to class every day, doing homework. And it, at the beginning, was still very frustrating because I was like feeling so proud. Like, I was like, oh my God, I wrote an essay. It's like the first time I'm writing an essay in Chinese. And I think it sounds really smart and all that. And then it comes back and it's all like red, right? Like, my teacher just corrected everything. And I'm like, oh no, like, I guess I'm not that great. It's difficult because, first of all, the characters, like, we don't have that at all.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, but it's also just so time consuming.
Right.
If I start learning a European language and I hear a word, I'll remember it. Like, I don't have to learn it. I hear it once. Like,
it's in your head, right?
Not always, but often. You know, if I hear a word, I can remember it. Because to my brain, it sounds like it has the structure of a word.
Yeah.
Makes sense to my brain. Like, it's the sound of a word. When I was first studying a little bit in Beijing, every time I was sitting on the subway, I would read my notes and try to read the words and remember them. And I could not retain anything.
Yeah.
And I realized to my brain, it didn't sound like words. The sound doesn't relate to anything. Like, to me, it could have just been any sort of a sound.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't retain anything.
Well, I think I want to give Claire a little challenge. I'm going to give her a pop quiz. I'm going to ask you a question in Mandarin, and you have to reply in Mandarin. Are you game for that?
Okay.
Here, hold on. Let me switch gears. Claire, 来台湾以后，你最喜欢台湾的东西是什么？
台湾的东西，你说是吃的东西还是？
都可以。你最爱台湾的地方是什么？
很难说。我非常喜欢台湾的大自然。我很喜欢接近自然，所以有空的时候我会去沙滩还是爬山这样的地方。然后我去旅行的时候，我特别相信认识台湾人，跟本地人说话，然后认识他们的文化，他们的一些故事，然后吃看台湾的小吃。
Yes.
我很喜欢去市场跟本地人说话，他们给我买一些东西，这是什么？这是我做的，这是本地人的小吃，很好吃啊，好，让我试试看。这样的经验，对啊。
好棒 Claire, 你好棒。
哪里？
I literally was getting goosebumps when you were talking. I think you definitely have a talent with language.
哪里？
真的 It's amazing to know that you're actually able to convey your thoughts in your head in just such a short time. That's amazing. So Claire actually is a friend of Teddy from a few weeks back. And like Teddy, Claire speaks multiple languages fluently. 7 to be exact, right? I was thinking I was gonna give you another challenge. Since you know so many different languages, can you name them all and maybe try to say a quick sentence right after each language? That way we know you're not just bluffing, right?
Okay. Right, my name is Claire, that is English. Ich mag Sprachen lernen und ich spreche 7 Sprachen, that was German. Je trouve que chaque langue me permet de voir le monde d'une autre perspective, French, perché imparare una lingua vuol dire anche imparare una nuova cultura, Italian. 所以我来台湾学中文，认识台湾文化 everybody knows. Y me gusta mucho viajar por Taiwan, Spanish. Tak si tady užívám krásné přírody i přátelskosti místních lidí. That's check.
Oh, wow. Did we name them all?
I think so.
I'm really happy that at least I can recognize what language it is. Except for the last one, Czech. I'm not familiar with it, so it's hard for me to pick up the sounds. Well, thank you so much for putting up with my crazy request. What did you say just now, by the way?
So I said that I like learning languages and I speak 7 and that I find that every language allows me to see the world from a different perspective. And then in Italian I said because learning a new language means also learning a new culture. Then I said that's why I like traveling in Taiwan and studying Chinese here in Chinese. And then I said so I travel around Taiwan and I'm enjoying the beautiful nature and the friendliness of the local people here.
So do you find it that it's really hard to switch back and forth between different languages? Because like I have a hard time even just with Mandarin English sometimes.
I think that's totally normal. Like sometimes I get totally confused. So it happened to me, like I'm sitting in the car with some Taiwanese people and they're talking and then my friends are messaging me and we're messaging in French. And so then I want to talk to the people in the car and I'm about to open my mouth and start speaking to them in French. And I catch myself and then I'll talk to them in Chinese. I go back to my phone and I want to respond to everybody in Chinese. So that's very confusing.
Yeah.
But I don't think it actually happened to me. Like I'm always on the brink of doing it, but then I catch it and then I need to take a moment and hold on, like how do you say that in another language? And I think it's mainly challenging because every language is different. So like you would say something like in a language, but then it doesn't exist in the other language or like you just wouldn't say it, you know, so it's really strange. You want to like say something funny or like make a point, but then it just doesn't really exist in the other language. So you kind of like lost your comment and you lost your moment and you're like, I don't know, you want to say like, oh, mafan, like, you know, you wouldn't just like say that in English, like, oh, that's like, oh, it's so much hustle, you know, like it's not the same, right? Like,
not the same. Not the same.
But what happens is if I start learning a new language, if I get confused then with the last language that I learned before and that I haven't learned to master yet. It happened to me whenever I like started learning a language, even a language which is completely different, just because my brain sort of labels it as the foreign language we're learning in my brain.
Totally.
I started learning Greek and I was mixing it up with Arabic because that's what I was learning before. And then I started learning Romanian and like it was all mixed up with Arabic. And then I was living in China and, you know, like I knew some Chinese. And then I traveled to Jordan and I haven't used or heard Arabic for 2-3 years. And so whenever I start to say something in Arabic, just Chinese comes online, even though they're completely different, right? So it's just the brain sort of like has a way of compartmentalizing everything and putting it in certain places in the brain. And I feel like once I really master a language to proficiency, it has its own place and it's settled and it's not gonna get mixed up. But before that happens, it's just vague space of like foreign language. And I feel like that happens to a lot of people. Like my mom, for example, she doesn't speak any foreign language, but she knows bits and pieces from 3 or 4 different ones. So when she tries to find a word in a foreign language, it's gonna come in all the different languages that she might have heard it in, but maybe not the one she needs, right? It's very interesting how the brain works.
So being able to speak multiple language fluently really means that you travel with ease. And I definitely know that you are a world traveler and you've visited as well as lived in many different places around the globe. Have you always traveled since you were at a young age, maybe with your family?
Not really. When I was little, basically the only travels we did was to the beach, to Croatia once a year. And like there we stayed in like a little village by the beach for 2 weeks. But somehow I was always just fascinated by traveling and going on journeys. When I started watching foreign TV and I was like, oh my God, like it's so exciting and I want to learn English. and I want to get to know the world. And then I was like watching TV obsessively. By the age of 13, I was pretty much fluent in English just because of that. And then I realized like, oh, I really like learning languages. And it was always my biggest dream to study abroad. But at that time, it seemed like I would never be able to do anything like that because I come from a small town, you know, in the east of the Czech Republic. And I didn't know anybody who'd ever traveled abroad. So it was just really a dream, but I had no idea how I could ever make that possible. But then, you know, like, I guess things just take momentum, and I realized I was really bored at my high school, and so I decided to switch high schools and go to a different city and do a bilingual high school. And, you know, it's a bigger city, it was a better school, so there were different people and different opportunities. And at some point I heard about some opportunities, some scholarships to go abroad. So eventually I ended up going to France, even though I barely spoke any French. And so there I learned French, as difficult and I guess even maybe traumatizing at times because I was so young and I was all alone, but I was just so grateful for this experience. I got to understand another culture, I got to learn a language, I learned so much, and it was just so invaluable. So it's like, I don't know how, but I want to do this again. And so the year after that, I went on like some cultural exchanges for youth subsidized by the European Union, and I just make the most of it. I like talked to this German girl and I told her basically what I just told you about France. And she's like, well, if you want, you can come and stay with me in Berlin and go to my school. We have a free bedroom anyways. And I'm like, haha, that would be great. She was like, no, I'm serious. And then 3 months later, I'm moving to this girl's house and I started going to this school in Berlin. And I'm just so grateful because this really just opened up the world to me. And so that's how I learned German when I was 17. And once you start, it just never stops. At that point, it was just before I never imagined I could study at university abroad. But at that point, it was just so obvious to me. I just could not go and study in the Czech Republic because I felt like I've outgrown, you know, like what the country could offer me. I was like, I want to go further and explore more and meet more people from different countries. And yeah, like see how much I can learn about this world. And so at the end, yeah, I went to universities abroad and I ended up studying my university degrees in 4 different countries. And in the summers I went for au pairing. Like for example, one summer I was like, I want to learn Italian. I don't know any Italian, but I don't have any money to pay for a course. And so how can I go to Italy? And so I was like, well, I'm gonna be an au pair. So I'm gonna go and live with an Italian family, take care of their kids, and be in their family house every day and listen to them speaking and just experience the culture. And then I did internships and I applied for jobs abroad and I volunteered. So there's just so many things you can do if you want to move to a different country, or even if you want to travel. There's different programs and groups and websites. So like there's a group called Host a Sister, which is basically like couchsurfing only for women. So you can post that you want to host somebody for free, you're looking for a place to stay for free, you can just meet up with people for free. There's house sitting, you can take care of people's cats or dogs or plants or whatever when they're on holidays, live in their house for free. There's house swaps. I've hitchhiked all over. Like I've been hitchhiking in Switzerland, in Taiwan, to like save the costs for transportation. There's just so many things you can do. I think what I want to highlight is that once you decide that this is what you want to do, you like put yourself out there and you start meeting people and you make foreign friends, and then you can visit them, and then, you know, you just get that momentum, and then it kind of never stops. It just becomes part of your nature. You realize the world is not scary, the world is safe, people are amazing, they want to help you, they want to get to know you, they want to learn from you. And yeah, it's beautiful, really.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I think it's part of being open and receptive to other people and other cultures, but also, I mean, from all your stories, you can tell that you really take the initiatives and your destiny is in your own hand, right? Instead of sitting around waiting for someone to make it happen for you, you made that happen for yourself because you wanted to go to different countries and experience different cultures. I'm a firm believer in karma. Like you said, what you put out, you shall receive. Because a lot of people, when they get older or whatever, for many different reasons, you know, when they get married, they have a spouse, a child, or a pet to worry about, and they feel like they can't travel and do all these different things. But like you said, there's different ways, you know? And so I think if you put out the positive energy in your life, you will meet great people and magic would happen. happen in your life as well, right?
That's what I believe. Absolutely. Yeah.
You probably have some really fun stories from your travels, Claire. Can you share a few with me and our listeners?
Oh my goodness, I have so many stories.
Too many, right?
What kind of vibe are we going for?
Why don't you tell one about your favorite travel story from Taiwan and maybe one from anywhere else in the world? What kind of vibe? Surprise me.
Okay. So Taiwan, I can think of two. Well, I guess they kind of intertwine. So the first was, I wanted to go to Alishan. I had no idea how to get there. I did no research, and I was like, okay, let me hop on a bus and go to Jiayi and then stay for one night and then do a day trip. And then I get to Jiayi, and then I'm like asking this woman in this hostel, I'm like, hey, how do I get there? She's like, I don't know, it's so far, I never go, like, stay here, don't go to Alishan, Jiayi's more fun. And I was like, okay. And then this lady's like, here, have you eaten? And she's like making me food, and she just keeps feeding me for free, and I'm like, okay. And then the next day I'm like, okay, there's a bus which leaves at 5 a.m. So I go to Alishan, and I'm like planning to spend one day, right? And then I'm like, oh, maybe I want to spend the night. And then I check, and obviously all the hotels are fully booked out, even though it's midweek. Yeah, just Alishan, very popular. And so I'm like, never mind, I'm just gonna like run around the whole day, just see as much as possible, and then get the last bus, which is at like 5 p.m, which is not great, but what can you do? And and I'm on like a few hours of sleep because I had to get up super early for this early bus, and I'm just like hiking up this mountain, and then I like meet some like older Taiwanese man, on the way, and he's like super friendly, and then I'm on the top of this mountain and there's nobody around, and then I hear somebody coming, and so I think it's this older man, and I'm like, Jiayo. And then this other man comes up who's a bit younger, and he's like, oh my god, like, I thought you were Taiwanese, and now it's like this foreigner like shouting at me like Jiayo from the top, like, who is this lady? And so we start talking, and like his English is amazing. It turns out he's lived in the US for 40 years, and then these other older gentlemen catch up with us, and then we just spend like at least an hour just sitting there and talking and sharing an amazing time. And this man, so he's like, oh, do you want me to call my hotel if they still have a room for tonight, like, do you want to stay? And I'm like, you know what, why not? And then he calls and they say a price. Okay, like, it's expensive, but like, that's great that they still have a room. And then I'm thinking about it, and then I'm like, let me ask my hostel back in Jiayi if they can keep my stuff and I can come back tomorrow because I left all my stuff there, right? And they're like, yeah, no problem, that's okay. And so I'm like, okay, I want to stay. And then he calls the hotel again, and it's like, oh, we said this price, it's 1,000 more, does she want to stay? And I'm like, I don't know, that's really expensive. And then we decide finally to walk down the mountain, and just before we start going down, there's this perhaps only other foreigner in the whole national park that sprints up, and I'm like, hey, I know you, like, you're the friend of my friend. And he was like, oh yeah, right. And so we start talking, and he's just like, oh my god, you must stay overnight, it's magical, like the sunrise and the sunset here, I must show you the pictures. It's really one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, but you definitely have to stay. It's so great. So I end up staying, and we end up getting up with this man, motivating ourselves to go see the sunrise. So we get up at 3 a.m. and hike together in the dark, and and we spend this like magical day. So there's like a tour guide there, and he's, oh my god, I've seen the sunrise here at least 10 times. This is the best one I've ever seen. Like, you guys are so lucky. Then we see like this rare bird and all that, and we just have an amazing day anyway. And then we like also were hiking like for half of the day with these older gentlemen, like just having a really fun time with them. And one of them is like a local from Jiayi, so he starts giving us tips for many different places to go for day trips. And so at the end I just realized like, oh, like, it's so nice here in Jiayi, and like this amazing woman in this hostel who's like still feeding me, and he's like, stay here, it's fun. And I'm like, okay, why not? So I'm like asking this man, is there any other places you would recommend for a day trip? And he gives me this tip to go to this mountain with tea plantations. And so I go there the other day, and there's a bus, and then you can switch and take another bus. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take the bus. And then when I jump off the first bus, I realize I need to wait for 30 minutes, and there's like nothing. It's just a crossroad and nothing. And I'm like, I don't want to wait for 30 minutes. I'm just gonna hitchhike and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I start hitchhiking, and I feel really bad, like I feel really awkward, like I put my hand up. And then this lady stops, and she's like, where are you going? And she's like, okay, tell me where exactly you're going and I'll take you. Like, I'll drive you there. And I'm like, you're not going there? Like, I thought there was only one road. Like, if you're going, take me. But if you're not driving there yourself, like, I don't want you to drive, right? Like, I don't want to bother you.
Totally.
And she's like, no, it's fine. Get on. Like, I'll take you. And she's like, no, I insist. So she takes me. And so we start talking. And this lady is like, oh my God, that's amazing. You're traveling alone. You're so brave to come here by yourself. And you know, I got married really young. I had children. I have 3. So I never left the country. I never had the opportunity to travel or follow my dreams. And I have some regrets about it. Oh my God, when I come home, I'm gonna tell my 3 kids all about it. Like, I'm gonna tell them. She's like, you know, this is the first time I'm speaking to a foreigner in my life because I don't speak English. I've never left the country. This is so amazing. Can I please take a picture with you? And she shook my hand and thanked me for getting in her car. I was feeling so bad to bother this lady, but at the end, I don't even know, like, I might have changed the life of her 3 kids and maybe even the entire family and village, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was amazing. And then on my way back, I missed the bus, so I hitchhiked again, and this lovely family from Tainan gave me a ride all the way to Jiayi, and they were like, oh, we're gonna go for dinner. Do you want to come with us? Like, yeah, let's go for dinner. And then they invite me for dinner and everything. Taiwanese people are so nice.
Yeah, well, I think it's really safe to travel in Taiwan in the first place, but also people are really friendly, like you said. They want to make new friends and they want to feel like they did something to make your trip or your stay more pleasant, including feeding you, which is a very Taiwanese thing to do, I feel like.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm glad to hear you encounter some good experiences here in Taiwan. How about another one somewhere else outside of Taiwan?
Okay, so I want to tell you about this crazy house in Switzerland where I live.
Okay.
So I call it the crazy house because it was so crazy.
Good crazy, though, right?
It was amazing kind of crazy.
Okay.
When I was living in Portugal, I decided, okay, I think my time in Portugal is coming to an end, so I'm gonna go somewhere else. And then there's this website called Workaway. You can go to another country, and usually it's like volunteering, so you live somewhere and eat somewhere for free, and in exchange work for them a little bit and contribute to whatever they're doing. Sometimes it's like the tourism industry, so you live in a hostel and work there or something like that. And so there was this ski hostel in Switzerland in the mountains, and I was like, wow, like Swiss Alps, you know, it's like famous for being amazing but really expensive to travel there, and I have never been there and I haven't skied in 10 years. Like, that would be amazing, right? I get in contact with this guy, and then I'm on the phone and I'm like, you know, I like my privacy, like I meditate a lot, like, can you guarantee me my own room? And he's like, no, I can't. And I'm like, that's it then, I'm not going. Things happen, and like eventually I'm like, you know what, like I think I should go, just see what happens. And I don't know how long I'm gonna stay, but we'll see. It can be an experience, right? And so eventually I go, and I end up living in this amazing mountain house in the middle of the winter. And the day I get there, it's snowing, it's just white everywhere, just mountains and nothing and us, right? And so there's other volunteers living there, and everybody's just so fun, and like people from all over the world. So we have people from Latin America and Europe and Israel and Kazakhstan, all these different countries all around the world. Everybody's super unique and everybody has a different story. And this was also during the biggest, harshest lockdown. So there's like this woman from a Latin American country who has a European visa that has expired over a year ago, but she can't go back to her country because nothing flies there because it's completely closed. And she's traveling around on buses with like an expired visa. Every time she's like, oh, please don't check. Every time they just stop checking before her, or like they take her passport and don't look at it. There's this musician from Brazil who's just decided to go traveling for, again, like also like during COVID, and then she was just in COVID in Europe. And then there's like this guy from Israel who like has been traveling the world with €5 on his bank account for the past 2 years, and like he has one pair of pants. At some point the pants ripped, and he's fixing his black pair of pants with a white thread. Today this guy is like somewhere in the Machu Picchu, I don't know where, and he's posting pictures wearing his dream destinations with barely any money on his account, wearing these pants. You can see the white thread, how he fixed them back then, and he's still wearing the same pair of pants. His shirt is falling apart on him on the picture. This guy is living his best life. He's been in the army, he's been in the prison, and while he was in the army 3 times, and just like every time we thought, okay, this is like like the craziest person I've ever met. It couldn't get crazier. Like the next person
meet a crazier
who comes,
one.
What planet did you fall from?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
And there was this only one paying client who was living there for like 2 months. And this person works for like an international organization in Geneva and is a boss there as well. But it's COVID, so he's working online. So he decides to move to this place. I wanted to like always experience something like this. Many people went for a very tough time during COVID, and his wife left him. And, you know, first he was very unwell about it, but then he was like, what good can I take out of this, right? So he was like, I can try this. Like, I always wanted to live in the mountains, so let me see if that works. And then he comes and he lives with us, all crazy people who are living there for free, just like homeless people with no clothes. Yeah, me kind of too, because all my clothes is in China,
That's
right?
right.
Like I'm wearing the same pair of leggings every single day. The only stuff I had was stuff that I had for Indonesia for jungle trekking. And then I moved to the Swiss Alps to go skiing in the middle of the winter, right?
Yeah.
And like somehow like just like, yeah, we have clothes. Like people forget things. Like here's some pants. I had all the equipment, all the clothes I needed. But anyway, so this man, and he's like working online and like supervising his team, and he's like, oh, it's okay, I can take my calls from the ski slope. So we're sitting on the ski lift and he's like, oh, I need to connect for my work call. And I'm like, are you serious? And so he's connecting to his work calls. And then one day, it's like my favorite story, they go ski touring. So it's basically you have these special kinds of skis and you're hiking up on skis uphill on like off the beaten track. It's quite dangerous and I've never tried it myself. But so they're hiking up on these skis, this mountain, and he's on this work call, right? And there's this other guy who starts crying because it's so difficult and demanding on these skis to hike up this mountain. And then this other guy, he's on his work call, and on the top he's like, oh, excuse me, I have a parcel downstairs, I need to go pick it up, I'll be 10 minutes. And he skis down from 3,000 meters, and just as soon as he gets downstairs, he's like, yeah, that's okay, I'm back. And we're like, what the heck? Like,
wow.
You know, like it's just absolutely amazing, impossible people sharing this living space together throughout the harshest of lockdowns, when all of my friends in all the different countries were depressed, you know, working from home alone, and we were living together, partying together every single day. And the experiences I've had, whenever I think about it, I'm like, did this really happen? Like it's I can't even believe all the things that happened there. It was so unbelievable. I feel like everybody there learned so much from each other, because for me, what it gave me was that there's as many ways to live as there are people, and there's no right or wrong way. There's people who have no money and they just travel the world and have their best life, and it's their choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's people who have a lot of money and they're still super fun, and they make friends with these homeless people and just live in the moment and know how to enjoy themselves, no matter how much money they have, no matter how important they are. You know, they just don't take themselves seriously and just are the same as everybody else. And there was like another girl who had a very prestigious job back in France, and one day she decided to quit, and she bought a van and just started traveling and living in her van, and she washes her hair once every 2 weeks when she finds a shower where it's not too cold, you know, and like she loves her life, right? And like it's as many ways to live as there are people, and all of them are legitimate.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a really fun, like almost like a hippie gypsy summer camp with all these really cool, fun, interesting people. You know, it's so funny. I kept thinking about that guy with the one pair of pants. I kept thinking, I hope he has 2 pairs of underwear at least. Anyways, you're gonna finish this language program you're in right now very soon, right? What's your plan for your next step?
What a good question. I am supposed to leave at the end of August, and I have several options, and they're all great. So first thing is I have this contract being offered to me as a trip leader. So it's not like a tour guide or anything. Like it's kind of like a platform which kind of functions like Airbnb, and I could just create any sort of trips or experiences that I want to do anywhere in the world, any kind of structure. It can be co-working working trips, it can be adventure trips, and just recruit people that I want to travel with, and then, you know, get to travel for free and like earn a little bit of a commission for all the work that I put in regarding planning and putting a group together and things like that. And that sounds really fun, and I already have one trip planned to France, but at the same time it's quite intimidating because I'm not a planner. I love to be super spontaneous. Like the last time, like, you know, my last 2 trips in Taiwan, it's like wake up one day, I'm like, oh, I want to go on a trip. Where do I want to go? How about Ryotan? Okay, how do I get there? Oh, 1 bus per day. Can I make it? Well, let me just try to make it and go to the bus station, and if I make it, then I'll just book it there. If I don't make it, I'll just take a bus and go somewhere else. Let's see. And so that's how I roll. And then I book one night, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay one more. Okay, I'm going to stay one more. So like this planning thing is a bit intimidating. So I have recently started coaching. So like life coaching, intuitive coaching, things like that. I have many ideas. I definitely want to write a book, and people are telling me, please, when is the book coming out?
Yes, keep us posted.
Thank you. I have an online group project for like personal development in mind, but I have no idea, you know, it could happen in the next months, it could happen in a few years. I just have no idea what the timeline is for any of this. But I was also offered a job over Christmas in the Finnish Lapland, which is basically like the North Pole.
Wow.
So I would be basically just enjoying the polar lights and sledging with huskies and whatnot while like taking some clients around, which sounds exciting. But at the same time, just when you decide that you have so many options and life's going to be really good, and then more stuff comes in. So like a friend of mine that I haven't seen in over a year just messages me out of the blue that he has this amazing opportunity for me in Switzerland, in one of the towns where I was living before, which just sounds so fun. And not all of these options are compatible. Like, I don't think I can do all of it. So I need to definitely sit down and see what feels the best.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, that's a good problem to have, right?
Too many options? Totally.
Yeah, so, yeah.
What should people do if they also want to become a global citizen like you? Like travel the world and experience life. What are some tips you can give these people?
I think at the end, it's all about you. It's about your decision to do this, your desire, your willingness, your courage, your trust. Just go and do it, really. Like there is nothing that holds you back except for your own beliefs about what's possible for you and the sort of identity you have about yourself. So like if you have an identity like, oh, I'm poor, or like, oh, I'm boring, or I'm not adventurous, I'm not courageous, I can't do this by myself. Like that's an identity you have about yourself that's preventing you from going out to the world and experiencing in a different way. So I think it definitely takes some courage for people to decide that they will just go ahead and pursue their dreams or their desires, especially because that often means saying no to what we think that society expects from us, what our parents expect from us, what our teachers at university, you know, expect that we would do with our degrees. But once you say yes to your dreams, yes to yourself, things just start happening as if by magic. It's, you know, I used to be very rational and logical, but at this point, like I have had so many magical experiences in my life when I just trust that something good will happen and just things fall into place. It's like you take one step towards your dreams, you just believe in the bigness of your desires, and like the universe just meets you right there and offers you more. Yeah, my mentors always used to say, how many coincidences do you need to stop believing in coincidences? So
that's a great thing to say. I love that.
So yeah, I would just say, just trust yourself a little bit more and trust in your dreams. Just take one step, see what you can do today, and you're gonna meet somebody. You're gonna be offered one opportunity, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and before you know it, you will gain a momentum and you'll be unstoppable.
Yeah, and be very brave, right?
Yeah, but you know, like I said, you can just start with one little step. You know, you'll be like, what do I want? Well, what would a person who is like that, what would they do? Or what would be the first step? What skill could I acquire? What experiences could I try, right? Just what is the first thing that you can try just to see how it feels? And, you know, maybe you'll meet somebody and one thing leads to another. Yeah, so even if it's scary, just start with something. If, you know, you want to be a global citizen, for example, maybe that means starting to learn a foreign language. Maybe that means taking the first solo trip or like learning about a foreign culture by, I don't know, joining a cuisine class. Whatever it is, just take the first step.
Right. That's all the time we have for today. Claire, thank you so much for chatting with me. I know your program is coming to an end soon and you have lots of really awesome options to go from here, but I hope that this won't be the last chapter for you and Taiwan. And everyone, I will put Claire's info on our website as well as on our Facebook and IG pages so you can follow Claire on her world travels. And she has some amazing IG photos of these incredible places and all these great stories that she told us. So make sure you go check her out. And I hope our chat today have inspired some of you to take tips from Claire's fabulous magical life. Thank you, Claire. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Thank you so much for these kind words. I mean, I think it's pretty much what I just said, but I would just say it again. Dare to follow your dreams. Say yes to yourself and love yourself. When you say yes to yourself, you will become an immense resource for others. And we always think that we need to consider everybody else first, but actually when we don't take care of ourselves first and when we don't do what we want to do, we just end up resenting others and eventually we are burnt out and sick and we need others to take care for us, right? And it's not a healthy way to live, and it's not even a way to sustain a society because we're always trying to fill everybody else's cup, but we're pouring out of an empty cup. And so if we fill our own cup first, if we first take care of what we need, what we want, and just make sure that we are happy and well rested and taken care of, then we can give from the overflow, and giving will be so effortless, and our own pursuits of our desires and the bravery to live our dreams, it will really inspire other people.
That was so much fun, Claire.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.